In April, I was in Somaliland for a documentary for Rudaw TV. During my visit, I met the country's foreign minister, Saad Shire, and had a conversation with him about Somaliland's process of state building and their struggle for international recognition.
He has been very useful. Mr. Saad Shire, thank you for giving us this opportunity for an interview with Rudaw TV. So I would like to ask you a few questions about the situation in Somaliland, your foreign policy and diplomatic efforts and all that. And the first question is, I'm aware that for 25 years, Somaliland has been trying to gain international recognition. Why do you think the world is not willing to give you that recognition? What's the reason?
Well, first I would like to welcome you to Somaliland and to the capital of Somaliland, and especially to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's our pleasure to have you here. It's true. Well, let me first perhaps give you a bit of the background history of Somaliland. Somaliland was a former British protectorate from 1887 to June 26, 1960. So Somaliland was on the map for 73 years. It's not a new country. And then in 1960, when we took our independence, we formed a government with the prime minister and a cabinet, and we had a legislature. And then at that time, there was a lot of anti-colonial sentiment and feeling within the community. There's a lot of African nationalism, you know, within the continent. And you know, people wanted to see all Somali-speaking regions come together. There was that dream of creating Greater Somalia. And in that wave of sentiment, I think we rushed into joining Somalia. Even though, in fact, the union was legally questionable in the way it happened, because it was supposed to happen this way. It was supposed that the Parliament of Somaliland will pass a union law, and the Parliament of Somalia will also pass a union law. The two will be put together, and then the outcome will be signed by both parties. That was the way it was supposed to be done, but it wasn't done at all. In fact, the union law proposed by the Somalia legislature was ignored totally, you know. And we didn't sign any union as such with Somalia. And when the union law, you know, proposed by Somalia was put to a referendum, our people in Somalia, in fact, rejected it. The majority of the people voted against the union law, against the anti-constitution. So, you know, there wasn't really much of a union. There was a desire for a union, but legally, the union really did not take place in a way. But nevertheless, we have been together for 30 years, and during those 30 years, the people of Somaliland felt marginalized, you know, and discriminated against, and suffered a lot, particularly in the last 10 years in the hands of the Saad government, which was in power at that time. We lost from 1981 to 1991 maybe up to 100,000 people, and there was
in prisons, executions, or how?
Well, I mean, particularly in the later half of the 80s, there was a sort of a genocide campaign against our people. Up to now, we have identified 243 mass graves in the country.
Separate mass graves?
Separate mass graves, 243 separate mass graves. And the country was entirely mined. They laid more than 1 million mines. We have identified up to roughly 1,000 mine fields in the country.
This was all done by the government?
By the government itself.
The government of everyone?
The government itself.
Not a foreign country?
No. And this city, Hargeisa, the capital, was flattened. It was bulldozed to the ground by aerial bombardment and artillery shelling by the government itself.
So basically, you gave Somalia a chance for 40 years to live together, in 30 years, to live together in real partnership and in a democratic place. But what you got in return was this, bombings and killings.
Yeah, we were victimized, basically. And then in 1991, when the government collapsed, we have been fighting against the government for, 10 years, and when finally it collapsed, our people decided to leave the union because that wasn't serving any purpose at all. The net result of the union was total destruction and displacement. And our people, came together and said, well, that's enough. We're going to reclaim our independence. And they declared, independence, and that was 25 years ago. And since then, we have been an independent country with, with a democratic form of government. We have an elected president and an elected parliament, elected councillors. We have our own army, our own police people, and our own flag and currency.
So you mean as soon as Somaliland started ruling itself in 1991, things started to change for the better, the opposite of what it was under Saad.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think what we have achieved in the past 25 years, has no comparison with what was done in the previous 30 years or so. Okay. Just to give you an example, in 1991 there wasn't one single university in the country. Today we have more than 30 universities. That's just an example.
Somaliland.
Yes.
And so you have this functioning democracy here. You have elections in Somaliland, elected president, elected members of parliament, and stability, because Somalia, we know what it has been going through since the early 90s. Going back to the first question, why the world is not recognizing you? Is it about the consideration of sovereignty or what?
Well, in a way, Somaliland is a de facto state in the sense that it meets all the requirements of a state. It has a defined boundaries, international boundaries. It has a defined population. It is a government in control and authority. It has the ability to enter into agreements with other countries, with international companies. So it has been, in fact, we have achieved a de facto recognition. The only thing that's missing is the sovereign recognition of Somaliland.
And I think that should be easy because you have already declared independence since 91. And the difference with the Kurdistan region, for example, is that it is almost a state. It is ready to be a state, but has not officially declared. You are one step ahead because you declared.
Yeah, we declared.
So what's the reason they don't give you that recognition? Do they want to fix Somalia? Do you think Somalia could be fixed?
I think there are maybe two main reasons. One has to do with Somalia. I mean, there was the notion at one point that, well, let us first fix Somalia before we address the issue of Somaliland, And then, of course, there is the issue of, we started talking with the Somalis back in 2012, and some of the people are saying, well, let us wait for the talks to succeed, or end somewhere. So that's another reason. Of course, Somalia is still claiming Somaliland, even though in fact we have nothing to do with Somalia at the present time, and that's an issue in itself. A lot of Europeans would say, well, this is an African matter, so why don't you talk to the AU and get recognition from the African countries before we can recognize. But we think that's not right at all for many reasons. Well, first, we have a good legal case at the end of the day for Somaliland to be recognized by the international community. And I think we have also a moral case, take into consideration all the things that, that we went through and the suffering our people had to, bear during the 30 years in association with Somalia. So we think we have both legal and humanitarian, case for us to be recognized by the international community. But I think it's just a matter of time. We're very optimistic.
Okay, and if Somalia, I've heard or read in places that if the world says if Somalia recognizes you, then it would make it easier for the world to recognize. Do you think Somalia will ever say, okay, I recognize you as an independent state?
Well, I really hope so, because I honestly believe that the recognition of Somaliland by everyone, including Somalia, will also benefit Somalia itself. I think we will be better off as neighboring, brotherly, countries who cooperate on all issues of mutual interest.
There are some concerns, or some in the world, they say if the Kurdistan region of Iraq declares independence, it will cause instability in the region, which is not true. The Kurdish leadership says no, it will create more stability. Do people say the same thing about Somaliland?
They do. In fact, a lot of people talk about the opening of a Pandora box. This is what they say. But we had a mission from the AU in 2005, and in fact they put together a very good report, a very positive report, and they said that wouldn't apply in the case of Somaliland because there is no case like Somaliland, in the history of Africa. So there is no comparison, and the independence and the recognition of Somaliland will not cause the Pandora box people talk about. So, because there is no country with our history.
Especially because you voluntarily joined Somalia. It's not that you are separating from Somalia.
Yes. We voluntarily joined. We were not forced by anyone at all, and we voluntarily left the union. And this is not the first time this happened in Africa. There were other instances. For example, Senegal and Gambia, they joined as two independent countries and then separated as two independent countries. As you know, there was a union between Syria and Egypt at one point, and they separated again, peacefully. And even there were cases where, like Sudan, where you had one country, which now is two, peacefully separated. I mean, they had a war for a long time, but the separation was negotiated, and they separated, and that did not cause the Pandora box.
Actually, I think most separations in cases like Kurdistan, Somaliland, South Sudan, it stops bloodshed and suffering. But when you are forced together, it's only destruction and war.
Absolutely. I think it's more stabilizing than destabilizing.
Yes, and as a foreign minister, can you tell us that what's the foreign policy of Somaliland? Is it to have good relations with all of its neighbors? Because some fear that an independent Somaliland or an independent Kurdistan or some other places might pose a threat to one of its neighbors or to the neighborhood. What kind of foreign policy do you pursue?
Yes. Well, in our foreign policy, we pursue three strategies. One is political strategy, and has to do with building good relations with the international community and with other countries, and collaborating with them on many areas of mutual interest or concern. The second strand of the second strategy is the economic strategy. We want to attract as many investors as possible, but also we want to ensure that we receive aid from the international community. But we also pursue a security strategy to make sure that we create allies who share the same interests with us, to make sure that our country and our region is peaceful and stable. So these are the sort of policies that we follow within the foreign policy.
Has any country refused to deal with Somaliland diplomatically or economically out of consideration for Somalia? Is there any country that says, sorry, I can't deal with you because Somalia will be upset?
Absolutely. Well, not really. In fact, I have been to 13 countries, I think, in the last year, and this year I've been to 6 countries, and I met with a dozen ministries even this year, and I have never come across someone who would say, you're talking rubbish, we don't agree with you. I think everybody who hears the story of Somaliland is very sympathetic, says, well, I think you should be recognized. So I think we have a compelling case here in Somaliland for the international community to recognize.
Okay, and do you think how many countries are willing or have expressed to Somaliland willingness to recognize you, but they wait for another country to do it first?
Yes.
Is there countries?
Yes,
like
well,
that?
in fact, there are several countries who said, we'll be the second one, not the first. I wouldn't mention that in front of the camera, but I think there's a lot of sympathy around the world for Somaliland case.
Okay, and so far no country has recognized Somaliland?
Not yet.
Okay, and but currently you have good relations with Djibouti, Ethiopia, and
We do.
And you haven't posed a threat to Somalia?
Not at all, not at all. I mean, for the past 25 years, you know, we didn't cause any trouble in Somalia. We don't, that's not our intention. In fact, our vision is a peaceful, stable region which is economically integrated in this part of the world. That's our vision. So we mean no harm to anyone. We don't mean harm even to Somalia, despite all the suffering that that we experienced in the hands of Somalia in the 30 years we were together.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the world should know more about Somaliland? Is there enough knowledge out there in the world about here?
My real feeling is that people don't know very much or as much as they should about Somaliland. I mean, ignorance, I think, is one of the barriers to recognition for Somaliland. We're working on that. I mean, nowadays, you know, the internet, the social media, you know, enable you to reach all parts of the world, so we are working on that. But I think, you know, the more people know about Somaliland, the better.
Mm-hmm. And do you follow the politics or the situation in the Kurdistan region of Iraq? What do you think about that?
Yes, I think people of Somaliland follow very much what's happening in Kurdistan because you know, we have similarities. There is a lot of similarities and sympathy, in fact, for the case of Kurdistan as well. So yes, we do.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Saad Shire, for this opportunity, and it was nice talking to you.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.